obviously you are legitimately at the very top in terms of performance accomplishment in the field. So what have you learned about what it takes to train to become not just elite but the best?
Well, a lot of people, when you say train, they see training hard. I believe you need to be very constant and very disciplined. You need to train, but you don't need to train hard every day. That's what John taught me. Um, for me, is the nervous system. Sometimes I feel if I load it up too much, it comes to a point that it's too much. There is no more information that I can absorb. So, and I do believe that it's something that you can train to your capacity of being able to learn, of absorbing certain thing. And I did a lot of volume of training, but when I was getting ready for a fight, especially during sparring day, I like to do it quick because when I fight, it's 5 rounds of 5 minutes. I don't like to spend um, an hour or 2 hours in a gym because I need to know how hard I can be going for 25 minutes. You know what I mean? Not for 2 hours, for 25 minutes. And my last fight, John and I, we were thinking of how could we make me more of a better finisher, more opportunist. And John, I remember we when we were training with Gordon, Jake Shield came, Gary Tonin, my round of grappling were different than if I would be training for Abu Dhabi, for ABI or like in grappling, the round are longer. But in a mixed martial art fight, it's very rare that you're going to spend more than 4 minutes or 4 minutes and a half on the ground. It's very unlikely. I mean, it can happen, but so do you remember we did the round 3 minutes? We did all the round I was doing were 3 minute round. So it gives a different rhythm to the training. It forced me to be more opportunist, to be more of a finisher because I had only 3 minutes to do what I needed to do. So if I see something, I need to go for the kill right away. I cannot be too over patient. You know what I mean? And it served me well in my last fight. And I think that's a good blueprint to follow when you're a mixed martial art fighter. The result was great, and I think maybe I should have done that before. It was a great idea that we had.
Not to do, be very careful on doing too much volume. Right?
Yes.
Try to get out and then try to focus on finishing and getting out as quickly as possible.
To build up your foundation, I believe you need a lot of volume. But when you get ready for competition, it needs to be something that replicate what you're gonna be facing.
What are we talking about? What do you think? Like, is there rest days, 5 days a week, twice a day, once a day? Is there any one formula like that or no?
I do not believe in overtraining. I believe in under rest. Okay. I believe you can be under rest, and people always link that immediately to the volume of how much volume they train, which it could be something else. How are you feeling emotionally? Are you having problems, personal problem? Do you have a hard time sleeping because you have like someone died, or I don't know, like you owe money, you're broke, or what? Like, you know what I mean? It could be anything. There's something that can affect you psychologically or emotionally that made it in a way that you cannot sleep well because your stress, your cortisol level is high. You know what I mean? All these factors need to be taken in consideration. It's not only about the volume of training. People always think the volume of the training is the only thing that can affect recuperation, which is not,
Yeah, you have to minimize the amount of stress from all kinds of factors.
It's a very stressful job to be a professional combat athlete, whether you're a grappler, a boxer, a kickboxer, a fighter, and you need to be taken into account.
Is it more or less stressful than marriage? Just kidding. Okay. Next question. So I don't know how to ask this question, given what George just said, but you're training 3 times a day and finishing. Like, what have you learned about what brings out the best in you as the elite level grappler?
So over the recent years, I've actually changed it up a little bit. When I was coming up through from white to black belt, I felt that the volume was the most important. So it would be anywhere from like 3 to 7 sessions a day, going from school to school, from New York to New Jersey. And I think that the volume was very important to build the skills, where I just didn't know how to move my body at purple belt the way that I should. So I think that building the skills is super important. I think that early on, volume is very important. Now that I already have the skills built, I think that acquiring more knowledge is the most important. So I find that if I do so many sessions a day, like if I do 3 sessions a day, I feel sometimes by the 3rd session, I'm just like so mentally like there's so much information that's went through my head the first 2 sessions that I feel like I'm not even there mentally on the 3rd session. So I feel like doing less volume now, but having more mental clarity per session is more important because I already have the foundational skills acquired.
So a lot of your training is almost like just thinking, like learning.
A lot of it, yeah. So I'll do our schedule's been messed up since the pandemic because Henzo's got shut down and they were using a French gym in Puerto Rico, and now we're using a French gym in Austin. But once we have our own school, we'll have a set up schedule where I can pretty much just be there all day long. But right now I do like a lifting session in the morning, and then I'll come in and help teach at Henzo's. So I'm there mentally, I'm seeing what's going on, and I'm playing around with ideas in my head. And then I'm there physically and very sharp mentally for the competition class during the 1 p.m. session. And then after that, I'll go home, I'll rest and get ready for the next day.
What have you learned, John, seeing all these different athletes? Is there a universal rule that applies, or is it athlete specific?
Yeah. First, one thing that needs to be addressed is that George and Gordon play very different sports with very different athletic demands. Gordon can be in matches that range from anywhere from 6 minutes to literally hours long. As a result, the overall pacing and intensity of matches is massively different. Most obviously, there is no striking in Gordon's sport. Striking by its very nature is a much more explosive physical action than grappling is. Grappling is primarily an isometric kind of sport based around isometric tension and endurance. George's sport does feature a significant amount of isometric tension, but the majority of it is based around explosion. So the physical demands of the two sports are radically different. In addition, the time of application is radically different. George raised a very interesting point. His matches seem long, 25 minutes for a championship match. But always understand that a mixed martial arts fight at championship level, if it goes the distance, is really 5-minute matches. Each round is a match in itself, and that's exactly how you're scored. You're scored by who wins the most matches over 5 matches. As a result, the application of the techniques, especially the grappling techniques, has to be done at a certain pace. As George pointed out, realistically, the maximum application time you're going to get in most situations is somewhere between 15 seconds and 3 minutes. Even for a specialized grappler like Damian Maia, there's still a significant part of each round which is spent in setup time to actually get the match to the ground. It's very likely that at some point your opponent will stand up out of grappling and you'll have to reinitiate the entire process again. So that even for specialized grapplers, you might be spending only 3 minutes out of a 5-minute round on the ground. And as a result, you got to get your work done in a very short time frame. Gordon Ryan, once it goes to the ground, and it can go to the ground because he chooses to sit to the ground, may spend the entire match in ground positions. As a result, the matches have completely different pacing and completely different physical demands, and the preparation that the two athletes go through will reflect that. If George St-Pierre, in training for mixed martial arts, becomes fatigued
to a point where he's no longer physically effective and able to defend himself, the consequences for that in MMA training can be very deep indeed. Okay, if you make a mistake in mixed martial arts because you're fatigued and tired, and you take a full power roundhouse kick to the head, that's some deep consequences. A grappler doesn't have to face that. You can be completely exhausted in grappling and just sit in the bottom of the mountain, just practice just survival skills where you just don't get submitted from bottom out. And that can still be an effective training session. Complete and utter physical breakdown and fatigue can end an athlete's career in mixed martial arts. The consequences of training through fatigue in MMA are potentially very deep and very disturbing. The consequences of training through complete physical exhaustion and grappling aren't really that severe. Okay, you just tap. Whenever there's a problem, just tap. And so they're very, very different sports in the way you prepare for them. And a grappling athlete like Gordon Ryan, we can take many more liberties with physical exhaustion and the amount of hours a day you spend in training than you could with a mixed martial arts athlete like
Could actually be a benefit, exhaustion as a framework of learning. So like from a place of exhaustion, is there any benefit to you said being at the bottom of Mount, sort of understanding jiu-jitsu or grappling somehow deeper because you're physically exhausted.
Absolutely. Because then the only thing you have left in your favor is your technique. And then you'll see how technical you are. In addition, you'll get to explore realms inside your mind that we don't spend a lot of time in. And you'll learn a lot about yourself and your ability to endure, which will have potentially great benefits in similar situations and matches.
Yeah, there's, for me, for a recreational person, getting exhaustion allows you the great benefit to experience what it feels like to really get dominated at an even greater frequency than you otherwise would. And there's something there. There's some animalistic thing that's very unpleasant. And then afterwards, it takes you to a place of like humility, and I don't know, it forces you to rethink life in positive ways. There's something about dominance. Like, I mean, if you get dominated a few times, you can rationalize it somehow. You say, okay, well, I've screwed this up. But when you're exhausted and you have to do like 30 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour of just being dominated over and over and over, being submitted, I don't know, it's a very good process for other avenues of life, I find. I can't explain why, because I'm driving home crying afterwards, listening to Bruce Springsteen. But afterwards, somehow you can think clearer. You can see clear about what is the right path through life in all walks of life, like relationships, work, but also the grappling. Actually, the grappling is the hardest one to see what you have to do. It clarifies other avenues, the humility. It removes the bullshit. It's like we see the world through some kind of fog, and it just removes it, and now you can see things clearly. I don't know what that is.
I think it's important, like you mentioned, to push yourself, like sometimes to see how far you can go, because sometimes you can go further than what you think, and it can boost your confidence. You can push yourself through a certain limit, and maybe you thought your limit was before that point, and you pushed through it. But like John just mentioned, it's a risky thing to do in striking, because if you're exhausted, you're gonna get brain damage. In grappling, it's you tap if something wrong, but you can do it also in strength conditioning. I like to run track. I do it all the time in track and field. It helps me to know myself better. I think it's important. It's a good point.
It's like the scrimmage wrestling rounds we do. It's like, if you stop moving, that you're gonna get scored on, and in your mind, like, there's no mechanical reason why I should give up a score here. But you're so exhausted that you're like, oh man, this is terrible. If I stop moving, I'm a pussy. And if I don't stop moving, I'm gonna be twice as exhausted when we actually do stand up. So it's an interesting game you have to play inside your mind.
It's your pride very often that keep you sharp. You know what I mean? Because you just want to lay down and beat it because you're completely exhausted.